Welcome back to Bloodlines and Bottom Turns. This is episode 4. Today we're going to be giving a recap of the Lower Trestles Pro that just finished. We're going to talk through what our predictions were from the previous episode, how we went. We'd love to hear how you guys went in the comments. We're also going to be discussing a few other things during today's episode. We're going to be talking about the rookie season or the rookie cast that we saw through 2025. Obviously, a few of them aren't there anymore. We're going to be discussing, obviously, who the outright favourite right now is to be the Rookie of the Year for 2025. There's been a few moves within that category, I think, after Trestles with the ratings.
Definitely.
So we'll jump into that. We're also, today's going to be a little bit different. I've chosen a few segments to talk about. We're going to talk about surf etiquette in the water.
What, at Trestles?
I mean, I feel like it's a good place for us to relate it to, but obviously living here on the Sunshine Coast, we got places like Noosa and the Bluff, and another beach break down south that we don't like to name because it's already getting a little bit too overcrowded.
Mate, for one of the best beach breaks on earth. Never mention it on the surf report, which is pretty good.
And in the last segment we're going to cover is localism dead or evolving? And so obviously I'd love to hear your take on what localism was like when you were growing up as a Grom to then what I experienced and now what we see out there in the lineup ourselves. What do you think about that?
Yeah, sounds good because, it's definitely evolved over the years.
Yeah, completely. I don't know if Grom abuse is a thing anymore, but I feel like we'll touch on that once we get to that segment. So,
mate, I suffered a bit of Grom abuse, but I also still had the awareness to really respect the older guys in the surf. And I'd pull off some waves right next to an older guy and be apologising profusely for coming near him.
Well, let's not give away too much on that topic just now. But, guys, let's jump in. If you haven't already, guys, like and subscribe. Leave a comment down the bottom. Let us know if there's any topics you'd like to see us cover moving forward into the future. So let's kick off with the wrap-up of the 2025 Trestles Pro. Now, obviously, Yago Dora took out the men's. Belu Sakura Johnson took out the women's. Had her in my team. You beauty. So let's just dive in. One thing you and I noticed really early in the piece was that when it came to the judging, they were really wanting to see progression.
That was actually noted for the competitors in the event from the judges that they were looking for progressive manoeuvres, obviously variation of manoeuvres, and how they link them together.
Yeah, well, we noticed there was a couple of times where we thought there was going to be a big score, or I personally thought there was going to be a big score when you and I were watching it. But it turned out that because there wasn't enough progression within their score, it was kept towards that more mid-range score. You know, your high sixes to mid sevens. It didn't hit the excellent range. But then you'd see waves where they would do an air reverse, and then it would bust up over that 8-point ride into that excellent range pretty quickly.
Listen, and make no mistake, judging is, they're human beings that are judging it. I saw some things that I thought were mistakes from the judging panel, but these guys are sitting there all day watching it. I'm not taking anything away from them. They are professional, but I'll actually get into detail that a little bit later through this, because there was one heat in particular that an American surfer won over a Brazilian surfer, and I want to get into detail about that heat in particular.
Well, there's also a heat that I've seen causing a bit of a stir on social media, which was the Alejo Muniz versus Ethan Ewing elimination round heat. Now, I know the Brazilian Storm supporters have been very vocal in their disagreement with the scores given, considering they thought that Alejo's wave should have been enough to get him through. It's the one where he did some nice open turns. He ends up doing that grab rail reverse. I wouldn't really call it an air reverse. He gets his fins high, but he doesn't really project up over the lip. But obviously that score fell well short of what he required to get through that heat.
I think Alejo is getting penalised for how much work he has to do in between turns to get those turns done. I'm positive of that. They're really loving the seamless transition from coming out of a turn, going into a bottom turn, even if they're extending it without going to the pump. And you've got to remember, some guys will do a double pump off the bottom. Alejo will do a quadruple pump off the bottom.
I know we touched on that a lot in that previous episode, but look, it's almost like some of the guys must have listened. We had this joke the other day. It's almost like some of them are listening to our previous episode, which is probably not true, but That was the best I've actually seen Alejo surf in years. And I did think he surfed really strong. He was committed to his turns. He surfed with power. But at the end of the day, when you come back to the judging criteria, that's where you see the scores are being justified.
Listen, if I was Alejo's coach, and it's something that was said to me when I was that wannabe professional surfer back in the day, and it came from the head judge on the World Tour at that stage, stop trying to do so much. Less is more.
Well, yeah, you can even relate that to, Yago's heat against Ethan, where he did that really soft first turn, and then he weaved, and then just did an air rev, and then he got the 8-point ride that he needed to beat Ethan in that round of 16, I think it was, or was it the quarters he beat Ethan in? I can't quite remember now. I've been watching all the condensed replays again this morning just to make sure I'm familiar with it, but I've forgotten which one's which because they just keep popping up. But it's an age-old saying in surfing, like we even see it in the women's. Sometimes, that metaphor, less is more. If you're trying to manufacture a score, the judges can sometimes see that, and then that's going to work in your hindrance. Whereas if you see the guys that actually connect with that speed, power, and flow and progression in which what they're looking for, they may only do 2 turns, and they get an excellent score.
So again, my explanation as a coach being less is more, it means you're able to get more speed to do the actual quality turns, not so many turns. You got more speed to do your turn is going to be a bigger turn. It's going to throw more spray, okay? And you're actually going to carry more speed coming out of that turn to link into the next turn. So, like I said, it's been a theory for a long, long time, and I was doing it in the late 80s through to the mid-90s. Less is more speed makes for bigger turns.
Let's talk about the women's briefly because obviously we forgot to touch on them in a thorough detail last episode. We're so caught up with how stacked the heat draw was for the men's. But, actually, I watched it again, a lot of the women's this morning. And Betty Lou deserved to win it from the get-go. Like, when you watched her surfing the whole way through the event, she was one of the only ones out of the women that was connecting with the lip to a point where it was throwing that big fan of spray. And we spoke about this watching her. It's not necessarily she's definitely not the most powerful women's surfer in the world by far.
But she was connecting the dots with the lip every time.
Well, this is where timing's key. Like, you don't need to be the most powerful surfer in the world in order to make a turn look big.
Matt Banting.
Like we touched on last episode, it's all about timing and board placement at the lip that can then determine how big that turn looks. And so, Betty, hats off to you. You've done an incredible job with your timing to make your turns look absolutely massive. And obviously some of them were. Like, she was ditching the fins on some of them, staying so compressed and keeping that weight over top of her board. And it just looks so sharp. I'm so glad I put her in my team because obviously she went on to win it. But just watching her surfing, like we were saying, she's really matured a lot over the last 2 years.
Yeah, man, she's matured a lot since the Gold Coast Pro.
Yeah.
You can actually see her confidence coming, and she is actually starting her bottom turn earlier from behind the section and coming up into the pocket and hitting the lip, whereas I was saying a lot of surfers, this is where they're getting it wrong. They're not coming from deep enough in their bottom turn to attack the lip, so they're doing out on the face calves, which is never going to score as much as attacking the lip.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I did notice with the women's surfing, if you go back and watch that final, just touching on Betty, there was an astounding difference between her and Molly. Like, there was worlds difference in that final. And don't get me wrong, love Pickles, Aussie fan, love Pickles, but it was just all calves. There wasn't a great deal of spray being thrown off the lip. And again, I do believe that Pickles is a far stronger surfer than Betty. But Betty Lou's, again, timing and connection to the lip is what separated her from every other woman in that event.
And also, again, what was happening with Pickles was she wasn't coming up into the pocket as tight as what Betty Lou was. Even when Betty Lou was doing a carve, she was tighter into the lip line, and it was throwing more spray. Pickles surfs really well. She has got a really nice technique, but you got to remember, the closer you are to that lip, the more spray that you're going to throw.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I want to give you some big props here, Robert. If anyone that tuned into our last episode, we gave you guys a full rundown of who we thought was going to win round one and who our fantasy team was. Now,
don't go with your heart.
Don't go with your heart. The one heat that you that I said was 50-50 with you was Heat 1, where you went with your heart with Rio, but you did say that if there is surf, Cole Houshmand could definitely take it. So then if you were to include that as being like your 50-50 toss, you got every single one of those heats right. And it's the one time we've never put a multi on the round one, and we probably would have won some money.
Yeah, well, I don't gamble, but it did surprise me. In the end, I actually said to you, did I get them all right? Or, hold on, that's right, I had Rio.
Yeah, but then I obviously, I gave it to you. It was a gimme. I said to you, I was like, yeah, but you did mention Cole is going to be a threat if there's waves. And to be honest, I went back and watched those heats this morning. I reckon the heat between Jack Robinson and Cole Houshmand was probably one of my favourite heats to watch because you had a beautiful blend of both regular and goofy footers. Cole's rail game was sick, not just on his backhand, but on his forehand as well.
His forehand he was ripping.
And so I feel like any other heat he would have been in, he probably would have won. Jack just connected really well on that 9-point ride and just it made it look flawless. The way he was entering his top turn and putting that board on rail, most people would probably lose it. Their fins would disengage off the back and they'd come unstuck. Whereas Jack just somehow knows, and maybe it's from surfing Margaret's a lot when he was young in that bowly section. He just puts the board perfectly in place where he carries his speed through and comes out of it with speed.
Yeah. So are we going to continue talking about Trestles? Because there's a few moments in Trestles that I was either disappointed in surfers or a little bit confused with the judging. Or then there's one guy that we've got on the TV right now that I was really impressed with. And I think the stronger he gets, and if he builds up his legs, he's going to be an incredible surfer.
Mate, go for it. I'm sure they want to hear it. You take the reins here. What did you see?
All right, so for starters, with Etiquette. Etiquette's airs were all flat just about this time or hitting soft sections when he lost to Joel Vaughan. Joel Vaughan's airs were phenomenal. The straight air he did over Etiquette was lofty as, and the tweaked out air reverse that he did, sensational. Joel just needs a little bit more muscle in those legs for his off the tops. His layback snap was incredible, but his calves, maybe he actually needs to put a little bit more volume into that board so he can push harder. Who knows, through the tail. But if this boy grows in stature and builds some strength up, he is going to be something really to watch over the next few years, and I've got a feeling he's going to end up Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, well, he was going to be my pick, and obviously on the ratings, he's made a massive jump up in the rankings to start looking like being that Rookie of the Year. But yeah, look, I agree. You and I had a big discussion during that heat, and I said, I love Joel's surfing, but I feel like it's just not quite there yet on his rail game. But that just means there's obviously room there for improvement for him.
Well, so for me, like I said, it's either him beefing up or his boards need a little bit more volume, and he's having to push a little bit softer to keep the board floating through the turns. If he's already got enough strength, and if he puts a little bit more beef in that tail, it's going to give him pushback in weak waves to push even harder through his turns.
And then obviously in the men's final, Yago Dora, that first wave he got, you did mention last episode that there's not many people that can match Yago in the air. I'll quote you on that. And I remember saying to you that I thought, maybe you're being a little bit generous, but when you go back and watch the airs that Yago does at Trestles, the tail is so high and lofted that it's like, I think I turned around to you, Dan. I was like, yeah, you're bloody right. Like, when it comes to a comp air, like, Yago is one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous, in the air.
He's the most stylistic air surfer as well. He makes it look good. So many airs look ugly, and he makes it look good. I mean, the style that he's transferred over from skating to surfing is just incredible. I mean, even his calves are really nice. But as far as airs go, mate, I haven't seen anybody else do airs where style is involved in that air.
We've actually got the round of 16 heat of Joel Vaughan and Italo just playing to our side here. So we're trying not to get distracted by it, but we're watching it all just on replay right now. Yeah, sweet. Did you have a favourite heat of the event? I said mine was the Jack Robbo Cole Houshmand heat. Was there a heat that stood out to you that you thought was just textbook surfing at Trestles?
You know what? I've watched the Joel Vaughan and Italo heat 5 times.
Is this the 6th or is this the 5th?
This is the 5th. Okay, and like I said, Joel really impressed me. You know what's really funny is there was a couple of little turns that were mistimed, but actually set him up so well for the next turn that was bigger than any other turn he'd done on the wave. So, and you hear about crew going, "Oh, I made a mistake, but it put me in rhythm with the waves." Sometimes little mistakes can set you up for big things in life, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Let's dive into this rookie conversation for the year. Now, I thought it was going to be Marco Migno at the start. Joel was just on the borderline of the cusp. Marco was sitting a few spots ahead of him. Obviously, Joel, with this result, has jumped well and truly up the ratings. I'll pull
Where would he be? Would he be about 10th?
I'm going to pull him up right now. I believe I saw it this morning. It would have been 10th or 11th, WSL.
Well, he was in 12th.
Stand by.
Can I just attack something else?
Yeah, you said there was something you weren't happy about. So what was it?
Well, no. Well, so the judges put out a thing. It was all on about, progression, and a lot of guys aren't going to like what I've got to say because there's so many guys that are anti-Brazilian. But I thought Felipe beat Griff. The wave they gave Griff his highest score on. There wasn't anything new age or progressive there. It was all on rail, and he cut his first turn short. His second and third turn were big, but they gave him the highest score of the heat for that, and there was nothing progressive in that wave whatsoever. And Felipe, admittedly, the wave might have been half a foot smaller. Felipe did a full rote. I don't know how to do a full rote, but, I understand how to do a rail turn, and I saw Griff go short on his first turn. I saw Felipe actually perform with progression, which is what the judges want, but they still gave it to Griff.
Do you reckon that could be a little bit of the local boy beef up? You reckon the crowd could have played a factor?
Listen, again, I'm not writing the judges off. The judges give what they feel. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole and say there was a script. Okay, I just believe there's humans judging, judging other humans, and things can go wrong sometimes.
All right, just going back to that point before. So Jolie Vaughan's moved up 5 spots on the rankings into 14th from 19th, and then Marco's dropped down 4. So
are they the only 2 rookies?
I believe so. They're the only ones left in the running. Oh, you got Al Cleveland Jr. sitting down there, but he obviously had a really tough result this time round going up against Ethan in that elimination round, I'm pretty sure. No, in the round of 16?
No, I don't know. What was really funny is I came out here one morning and TV was on and Josh was watching it, and I've gone, how'd they have the round of 32 already? They're up to the round of 16. Duh. There was only 22 in it.
I said, Dad, there has been a mid-season cut, mate. And he's, oh, yeah. And then even Joel, I said to Joel, the comp's finished. He's like, how can it be finished? They've only run it for 2-3 days. It's like, there's half the amount of surface on it at the moment, dude. Come on. Stick with it. But anyway, one thing we did see, which was unfortunate, was Baron Mamiya go down with a knee injury. Now, I've tried to look up exactly what it was. WSL isn't speculating or telling us exactly what the knee injury was.
From what I saw, it's medial meniscus. I watched it where he was clamping at with his hand. I've suffered the same injury 30 times. But the sad thing was he won the heat.
Yeah, he certainly did. And then had to obviously pull out due to the injury in the next round.
So this is something that has always got me about WSL, is they won't throw the next guy in. Okay, and back in the day when it was ASP, even then, I was in Japan. I had just come second in the world qualifying event with Kaipo, winning at Sunny third and Flavio fourth. And Pagey didn't show up for his heat, and I was the next guy in line. And because they didn't have Pagey ringing them and say he wasn't coming, they let the heat run. Guy had a walkthrough. They didn't even put me in. Okay, now, personally, I believe Kelly should have got another shot. I still think he should have ridden a Channel Island. Although, let me tell you, the wave after the heat was pretty darn good.
It's interesting, right? Because if you look at Kelly's scores from both his round one heat and then that second heat, it was very lackluster. Obviously, yes, he had that wave after the hooter. That would have been the score. Like, Barron's score wasn't much more. It was like 11 point something. But they were very, very average scores. And it's like, I understand where, Connor got a walkthrough in the next round. So I wasn't upset by that whatsoever for Connor. But it's also one of those things where it's like, it's unfortunate what's happened to Barron. I personally think if the comp's already underway, there's an injury that happens within the comp. We saw it happen with Ramsey Bookheim. I don't think there should be someone then brought in if the comp's already underway. What happened at Burleigh when Ryan pulled out due to the birth of his child, that's different. You brought someone into the elimination round. They were already in the elimination round when Barron got injured. Yeah. I don't think it's fair to bring someone up into the round of 16.
Fair call. Fair call.
Considering there's going to be a lot of other guys that got knocked in the elimination round going, well, then where was my chance?
Can we do a questionnaire? What is a survey? How many people think Kelly would have done way better on a Channel Island?
That's a great topic. We might even put that in. Yeah, we'll put a little poll up for that and see what you guys think. Do you believe Kelly Slater would have surfed better if he actually rode a Channel Island board and not one of his designs?
And let's not just make that for this event. Let's make that over the last so many years after he left Channel Islands and started riding weird and wonderful experimental shapes.
All right. Talking about the rookies still, is there, like, we spoke a lot about Joel Vaughan. Are there any other rookies? I mean, it's hard now too because a lot of them have gone back to the Challenger Series now. They've been dropped. So it's going to be interesting to see what the rookie class looks like moving into 2026. Can Joel Vaughan keep this momentum up? I feel like he can. What about Marco Mignot? I feel like both those surfers have incredible air games. But again, I feel like it's their rail game and their in-between stuff is what is letting them down in regards to drawing a big result.
Listen, it's got to a point now where if rookies come in and next year they don't have the cut, but if they make the cut, they basically solidified themselves with the judges on being one of the best surfers in the world. It even came back in my day and the head judge said to me, no, I was what you would call a rookie back then, sitting in, about 44th place in the world or whatever. And he'd say, you can't just beat these guys. You have to whoop them to get a win. Because even if you've just beaten them, you are not going to get the win.
Interesting take. Also, this is totally off script. I didn't say this at the start. It's something I really want to talk about because you and I, it's been a very big topic of conversation. We shared it on our story, and the day that we're filming this is actually his birthday. But can we just give a bit of appreciation to how incredible Occy's new edit is that he released a few weeks ago?
Oh, did we not talk about it on the last one?
We haven't touched on it.
Oh, really? Best edit I've seen in 20 years. The best promotion for Billabong I've seen in decades. And there's not one person, when I say this, for somebody my age or even 45 onwards.
He's. I think I saw he was like
Ox 59.
59 today. Happy birthday, Ock.
Happy birthday, Ock. Yeah, mate. First time I met Ock, I think he was about 15 down at the Australian titles at Duranbar. And he was watching everybody else run around crazy, chasing each other around in bare feet. And it's one of the smartest things for a 15-year-old Ock, let me tell you. He's going, are you guys idiots? You're running around in bare feet. There's glass everywhere. You can't surf if you hurt your feet.
I think I remember you telling me that one time when I was at state titles
Correct,
too, pulling
mate.
me
Your
in.
feet are really important if you want to surf, people.
But honestly, that edit of Occy that Billabong put out where he's got Lennox Smith surfing with him at Bells and at Cloudbreak, absolutely incredible. We were discussing it. I was discussing it with a few friends of mine that they don't surf all too much, but they love how I describe what I see to them. And it's interesting when you look at a lot of modern day surfers these days, obviously they've got all the traction pads, all the fancy stuff, and they're moving their back foot right back to the kick to enter their turn and to put their boards on rail and to get that spice. When you sit and watch this clip, not only does Ock not ride tail pads, but his back foot doesn't move. If anything, he just brings it forward when he's pulling into the barrel and then puts it back over the front fins and then just does the most on rail driving hack you'll ever
Because-
see.
That's because Occy doesn't want to lose any speed when he does a turn. He either moves it up in front of the fins to get more speed, and then when he does a turn, every turn Ock does is a driving turn. What are our side fins called originally? Driving fins. So he's going to get more drive, leaving that back foot over those front fins and drive through the turn and maintain speed. And then when he finishes the turn, he pushes back on those drive fins to build speed again.
Well, for anyone that hasn't seen that edit, we will put a link down in the description for you to jump on and have a look for yourself. It is, honest to God, phenomenal.
Can I just jump in there? I've had a couple of people I know that have watched it. And Ock, this is for you, buddy. They've all said Ock could beat most of the clowns on the world tour still.
Yeah, I've had a few mates actually turn around Ock and say you're surfing just as good as you ever have. One of my mates said, "Oh, he looks stiff as a board." I was like, "Mate, he's pushing 59." I was like, "Give him a break." I said, "He surfs better than most of the young guys."
Correct.
And so, Ock, you look happy.
And hats off to how fit you are, Ock. You're looking good.
Yeah, you're looking fit. You're looking happy. You're still funny as ever, mate. All the best on your birthday. Happy birthday, mate. All right, moving on. We're going to talk about surf etiquette now.
Oh.
Something a little bit spicy because there are a lot of videos getting around on social media of I'm not going to try and even guess or speculate as to what nationality they are, but I'm seeing a lot of videos of people surfing with the GoPros, getting told to head in. They're not allowed to surf at a certain spot. You see multiple videos
Is this surf etiquette or is this localism?
Well, I feel like they tie into one another.
It is tied into one
They tie into one another. But the thing is, like, we have been bad with it ourselves. I can hands up say that I'm not innocent whatsoever, but I've obviously made a change to make sure that I'm better than what I used to be.
I basically quit surfing for a few years because I was that bad with it.
You know, when it comes to dropping in, snaking, not showing respect in the water, I feel like we live in a day and age where surfing has become such a popular sport, especially since the spicy cough happened in 2020, where people have tried to take it up. And it's our job, I feel, as surfers that actually know what we're doing to help educate these people rather than just, bashing their character. Because once upon a time, we were all kooks. We were all kooks once upon a time. We didn't just jump on a board and rip.
We also bashed their character through years of our surfing life as well. And I actually find out there it's not really the good surfers that are bashing the kook. And it's a lot of grumpy old men or really average surfers with big egos.
Well, yeah. Like, I know, like, for myself, when I was going through a bit of a rough patch a couple of years ago, I had a run-in with a guy that got in my way when I was paddling for a wave. And I did apologise to him later on in that surf. But, when it comes to surf etiquette, guys, for anyone listening here that knows what they're doing, if you're not on the world tour, even if you are on the world tour, it doesn't give you any right to be disrespectful to anyone in the water. For the record, if anyone listens to this and I've burnt you before, please forgive me. I do ask forgiveness there. I've changed my ways.
There is also the other end of the stick. I can remember being out at Alex Leff's and this guy's dropped in on me blatantly and I've said something to me and the guy's turned around going, "Mate, who cares about you? You're an old has-been." But I had to come back. I said, "Mate, at least I was. You never will be."
Yeah, surfing can be a very prideful sport. I think you got to leave your pride in the car park. Like,
yeah, 100%.
No one needs that out in the water. Everyone wants to have a good surf, and just because you didn't make the world tour, mate, doesn't give you the right to then go out and act like an absolute prick. But I do feel like it's an interesting topic because when mum and dad own a surf school, they have for over 25 years. We do try to drill into our clients not to drop in, how to be respectful in the lineup.
How to paddle out in the lineup, to look behind you as you're taking off, looking left or right like crossing a road.
And so it's just one of those things when it comes to surf etiquette, I feel like, again, the onus falls on us as surfers who know what we're doing to help assist and educate those that are in the beginning of their surfing journey. So it is a sport that everyone should be able to enjoy and not have to paddle out and feel like they're doing the wrong thing.
100%. I've heard a couple of blow-ups just recently too, where crew are out in the surf and this guy's blown up and another guy's gone, mate, I stood up first. It's like, guys, whoever's on the inside deepest to the peak, they have the right of way. Not if he's paddled round and round you, but if he sat there and waited for his turn and he's on the peak, it's his way.
It reminds me of when I went over to the Mentawis and I stayed at Etiquette Beach Resort. I'd be surfing our HTs, and one thing I remember, this is a little bit of a segue, but there was one Pro Junior event I did in Tahiti, and the surf was absolutely pumping. And instead of us all hassling to get the best wave, the surf was that good. We literally all turned around to each other and said, all right, guys, the surf's too good to just have a free-for-all. Let's actually run a priority system today. And if you paddle for a wave, you miss it. If you don't want it, let the guy behind you catch it. Still to this day, probably one of the most memorable sessions I've ever had. But I've now taken that mentality to all point breaks that I surf, so I hope to wait my turn. And that's one thing that Kadu praised me on when I was over there. I think that's probably why he offered me the job, is because he'd saw me sit in the lineup and I'd let the people up the point catch their wave and I'd slowly make my way up. Unfortunately, it doesn't always happen, especially, I'm going to call yous out. You Brazilians are the worst at it, and the Japanese, two are the worst that I experienced when I was over there. Where
particularly in Indonesia.
In Indo, like where I was sitting there and they were just snake, and to the point where I almost got into a fight with one of the surf guides from one of the boats.
You've also got the Pelican, or Every Wave Dave. Remember Every Wave Dave?
Oh, everyone knows an Every Wave Dave.
Every Wave Dave, the guy that's in the Ments. He's out at HTs. It's only 3 to 4 feet. The Pelican's in his full Lycra suit with a hat on a mini mal, paddling inside everyone, every wave. But what you got to remember, Pelicans, when those 3 boats erupt with cheers, when you snap your board in half, there's a reason.
We had that happen at Roxy's actually a few years ago. Remember that? There was a Pelican out there, and I've actually got a photo. I'll see if I can pull it up on an overlay, and he was going through the wave while I was getting barreled, and I had to pull through it. And I think it was only a couple of waves after that he snapped that 9-footer clean in half.
The boats erupted.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things, like an age-old saying that I got taught from you guys was give respect to gain respect in the surf.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of places like Noosa, Snapper, the Bluff here on the sunny coast. And you've got a lot of grumpy old men. Okay, and let me tell you, half of those old men that are really angry aren't good surfers.
Yeah, they sort of get angry because they can't get around the section. They've waited 20 minutes. They can't get around the section.
I've seen them abuse women and children. And, yeah, when I was growing up, and admittedly, yes, I'm 60 this year, but when we were growing up, guys, take this on note. When we were 15 and we were decent surfers, we were told unless the bluff was 4 to 6 feet minimum, you didn't go out there because otherwise you were called a kook. It was be left to the women and kids to learn to ride a point break. So don't think you're all that when you're out there surfing the bluff. Why don't you take on a more challenging wave?
You've been called out.
Called out, boys.
This puts us straight into the localism chat, which is a great roll on. But Dad and I have obviously grown up our whole lives surfing here on the Sunshine Coast. We've seen faces come and go for many years. And like I said earlier, like we've definitely done things that we're not very proud of in regards to how we've acted with people in the water. But Dad, do you feel like localism is dying, or do you think it's evolving? And what was it like when you were growing up in detail?
Well, you know what? It is dying. There's some people that are angry because it's dying, and they're the ones getting grumpy out in the surf. I love Burley Heads. Haven't surfed there for quite some time, but I love the fact that there is still localism there. Okay, they're not going to let every man and his dog come out there and take over. It's possibly one of the only places other than Narrabeen I know that happens. We had a thing down at Moffat's when I was a kid. There was a big sign. I won't say the words, but basically was saying, Brizzos go home, locals only. It is dying. What you've also got to remember is there's a lot of places like our favourite beach break down the road that's only been developed for the last 25 years. Well, I started surfing that 45 years ago. And I walk down the beach and I've heard some old guys going, oh, yeah, blow-ins, yeah, blah, blah, blah. It's like, mate, you've moved here in the last 20 years. I've been surfing it for 45. You know, it's a real fine line. But, you know, there's a difference between localism and being stupid.
we've got our favourite break. We won't even name it. It can be pumping, but if it's crowded, I'll go to the crappy bank 50 metres away and surf by myself and at least get the pick of the best crappy waves that come through. Or if it's absolutely pumping, I will go out there and I will take my turn. Or we know which waves are the better waves. Sometimes they aren't the big ones, so we'll sit on that right section of the bank. But you've got to remember everybody out there, and this is what I give to the pros these days. The pros know that we were all kooks once. That's where we all began, and we had to learn as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember, like, when I was growing up, there was such a thing like grom abuse. And, like, we live in such a snowflake world right now where, you know, parents aren't even allowed to discipline their kids. But, man, I learned to respect my elders in the surf very quickly, because if I misbehaved, I'd either have a board right up my ass, like if I went to drop in or whatever. Tristan Hampson ran me over at Alex Left once. That was by accident, though. That was no fault of anyone's, but just accident. But I've had moments where older crew have come out and pushed my head underwater and said, wait your turn, Grom. You've had sand put down your wet shirt or your wetty when you get into the beach. Again, that age-old saying, you give respect to gain respect. You know, just because you got stickers on your board or you can do a cut back doesn't mean you can paddle out into a lineup and think you own it.
At the same time, you know, there does need to be a little bit of respect to the elders, to your peer group. The better, you know, you've got to give people respect for how much time they've put in.
Absolutely.
And how good they might be, because if they're a lot better than you, or they put in that much more time than you, they deserve more respect than somebody that's just blown in.
It's interesting. I remember when we went down for the Tweed Coast Pro a couple of years ago, and we had that big swell come through Kira, and it wasn't anything like the Alfred swell, but I remember clear as day, I was sitting out the back there with Breno Dorrington and Fanning, and I'm sitting there, and Mitchy Parkinson, I was like seeing them get waves, and I've been sitting there for 2 hours. I said, boys, you want to give me a wave? And they said, no, I just paddle for anyone. Just don't look to your left. And I looked at them. I was like, I don't live here. I can't get away with it. And they said, well, good luck catching a wave.
Yeah. Well, remember when we took you down to that contest at Cabarita and a bit of swell came up and we went up on the weekend to Snapper to have a surf. And I actually came in from a surf going, I didn't ride a wave. Anyway, we had a barbecue with a bunch of the local boys, actually legends from Snapper. And I said, boys, I feel like I was an innocent man thrown in maximum security in prison and violated. And they've gone, what do you mean, Robbie? I said, I didn't catch a wave. And all these guys, and I won't say their names because I don't want to throw them under the bus, but they've been locals there forever. And they've gone, just drop in, Robbie. We do. And I was like, I can't. This isn't my hometown. I can't do that. So that's not how I was brought up. I believe they have the right to, because that particular break is like turned into a city in Brazil where it's full of poverty and people are just trying to, like rabid dogs, to get a feed or a bone.
It's an absolute circus down there now, and you're seeing it on a lot of point breaks, like how it is just becoming a circus. Because when you surf a point break, obviously you get past your first couple of waves, you can paddle wide of the shoulder and paddle around it and take whatever position you want. But not there. No, you're right. But that was the same trip that we were talking about, where I ended up, you know, that afternoon that I was like, well, I'm going to go back out to Snap. I'm going to go back out to Kira and try my luck. And I sat there for 3 hours. It got dark. You guys were still you were having that barbecue while I was out there.
Correct.
Having that same issue.
Correct. And, you know, what's funny, and I said to the boys, I will not go surfing out there. It's only happened a couple of times because they're not out there all the time, but 2 times in my life I've been out at Snapper. I'm not catching anything. And one Parko paddle passed me one day, and then Dean Morrison another day. And they've gone, what are you doing in here, Robbie? Come out with us. And they took me behind the rock and basically said, you're on. And I got a decent wave. Without those guys who have the utmost respect from everybody in the water, well, Dingo, I know you like to drop in anyway, but I know you got respect there. But they were the guys that gave me waves at Snapper and from behind the rock.
I'm just checking. Rio starts in 5 days. That's a really quick turnaround.
Well, they're fitting more events in this year.
It's hard for us, like, so we're obviously not going to get an episode out before Rio starts. So it's kind of hard for us to say who we're going to be picking for what event. Obviously, when it comes to Brazil, because we're going to probably finish on this before we run too far over time, the Brazilians are always going to be your favourite picks when it comes to Rio.
Oh,
Because
100%.
they've spent the time, like we're just saying, when it comes to localism, like locals spend the time on a break, so they know where the right waves are and what the right waves look like. So all the Brazilians are going to be looking to really solidify their spot. Yago is going to be looking to back up his win just then, and then you're going to be seeing Felipe wanting to make a bit of a jump to try to get up in the top 5. I personally don't like Rio as an event. It's not an event that I overly get excited about watching. You know, I was just so grateful that Trestles actually had good surf for the event.
I've never been excited about watching Rio.
But I do understand from a business standpoint why they do it, because the support crowd from Brazil the Brazilian Storm supporters are so big in number that from a business standpoint they need to have an event there. I just don't think that, again, the wave quality with some of the other waves on tour are to the level of a world championship tour event.
It doesn't matter what you do. If you haven't got the money support to do something, it doesn't happen. Okay, they need the event in Rio. They need the South American support. They need El Salvador. They need Queensland government, New South Wales government, West Oz, Victorian governments, when the tour comes here, to actually participate and sponsor the events. Okay, because without that happening and without the public supporting, the WSL does not exist.
Absolutely. Now, I did read when I was trying to figure out exactly what Baron Mamiya did to his knee, that Baron has come out and said that he's going to be ready to go by Brazil. That is a 5 or 7 day turnaround since his injury.
You're going to find that if it's medial meniscus, which I'm sure that it is, he's going to have it strapped up and wear a knee brace. The only thing I find that he's going to struggle with a little bit, it's going to be his back. It's his back knee. Okay, I've done my front knee over 30 times, never had an operation, and within days, if there's swell, strapped it up, put a knee brace on, and got back in, and you can still surf. I'm not too sure how it's going to go with it being his back knee, because he's very back-footed as it is, and he's going to be putting a lot of pressure on that inner side of his knee as he goes through those turns.
Yeah, look, I wish Baron a speedy recovery.
Definitely.
I remember I did my knee 4 weeks out from the Australian titles. The first year I actually even qualified for the Australian titles. And I remember I was in the physio nearly every second day. I was doing rehab every single day. I was fortunate it was only a grade 1 tear and nothing worse. But it wasn't a good experience, and that was my MCL. So, you know, I think it's very optimistic him to be ready, especially because of the wave itself at Rio can be quite punchy. There can be backwash. It could be one that could even do more damage than he expects. But at the same time, he would have the best possible medical staff he could get access to.
And there's all sorts of ways, you know, because when you do your medial ligament, it's all about stopping it from seizing up and letting the fluid take over your knee to make it just solidify, if that makes sense. If he could keep, I actually thought if he was competing the next day or that afternoon, he'd be able to do it if he just got there and strapped his patella up and then strengthened the inside of his knee with some taping. And I thought he'd be able to surf. Wouldn't have done it any good, but I have surfed after doing my knee really bad within days of doing it.
Yeah, okay. Also, I just want to mention you've got some nice midriff that's been going on all episode, mate.
Oh, thank you. Just, can you edit that?
No, I can try. Try see if we can Photoshop your little MIDI out of there, mate. Far out, Robert. You're a classic. Look, guys, I might see if we can jump on and do a little impromptu one prior to Rio starting once the heat draw is out, depending on how we're going with work.
What I'd like to know is what the forecast is. The thing is, you can have a forecast for Rio, and if everybody's watched Rio before, it's all about the sand, where the sand is, what it's going to do. Last year, the sand was horrible. But then there's been times before where it's just this barreling beast. So swell size, wins and sandbanks, that'd be great to know. Then we could actually do a little bit of work on who we think's going to win those first rounds.
Yeah, for sure. So, guys, stay tuned for that. Again, if there's any topics you'd like to hear from us, please drop them in the comments. Would also like to hear who you think could be the winner of the Rio Pro. And also, if there's anyone you'd like to hear us interview, at the moment we are in the process of planning a trip down to the Gold Coast to interview some names.
I won't mention the names because I don't know whether we'll definitely get them. But we've got a few older retired pros that I'm semi-good mates with, and we're going to hit them up. So we'll see. Hopefully it's from that guy with the edit we were talking about.
Fingers crossed about that, boy.
Fingers crossed.
That'd be good. Anyway, guys, all the best. Thanks so much. If you haven't already, just again, like and subscribe, get amongst it, and enjoy your week.
Enjoy.